Hi.
All right. So let's do this.
Yeah.
This is our first podcast recording at Amara. And after 4 years of being here, and we've been sharing a lot while being here, receiving a lot of people, sharing tools, practices, and different knowledges. And so we'd like to explore what brought us here. And more specifically, it seems that pain is a strong driver of human choices and behaviors. And we both have had experiences with pain in our spine. And somehow it seems that it's brought us into a journey of yoga. And we've come to meet the same teacher. And in a way, this is what's brought us here together to share the same style of yoga.
I think in retrospect, it's not surprising that we came to meet Simon, we came to Synergy Yoga, because we have some similarities in our experience about having to deal with some pretty substantial pain, restriction, challenge, and like rehabilitation necessary for our spine specifically, but our bodies in general. And that our yoga practice and the things that we've found most useful have been about that, rather than about, as we often see in the world today, there's this very gymnastic quality to a lot of yoga and active yoga styles, which is fun. It can be, strengthening or like really expanding your physical capability. But we had to come from really square one. I mean, I remember for me, I had a spinal surgery when I was 20. Top half of my spine is fused together, and I was in bed for a month. Like I felt like I had to relearn how to walk after that surgery. And so my yoga comes from the most kind of like basic and vulnerable place that I could imagine in my life. And I think for both of us, we've had that experience of finding the strength in opening into this realization of vulnerability, which is a lot of what pain can bring us, and realizing that there's a great strength in being able to open to pain, as difficult as that is. So, do you want to just tell me about like what happened for you and what led to this sense of healing?
Yeah. Well, I used to be a soccer player, and I played since I was born almost, and it was really the driver of my life. It took me to move from city to city as I got to the bigger and bigger clubs, to the point that I left my country, France, to go to the US and play in college, in university. I got a full scholarship in San Francisco, and it was a dream to go into another country and to be paid to play soccer, and on the field I was alive. So it was really where I found my power. I found my community. We were working as a team towards a goal. It was very meaningful for me, and and then I almost from a day to the next just got that dream taken away. I mean, first I had surgery to my knees. I had got surgery on both my knees, but I recovered quite fast from that, and until the day where I started to have strong pain in my back and got diagnosed with a spondylolisthesis, which is a microfracture in my L5 vertebrae, causing it to slide forward and to be out of line with the other vertebrae, and that causing a lot of pressure on the disc below and under, and that causing the disc to herniate, to press on the nerve. And
which eventually, if you hadn't done something about it, could have been really dangerous, right?
Could have been really dangerous.
Eventually could paralyze you if something went wrong with that, or you kept playing soccer without dealing with it, right?
I remember so clearly the spinal surgeon in San Francisco telling me, "Look, Ben, if you want to hold your child when you're 40, you have to stop playing right now." And I was, you know, in this room hearing those words, and just it didn't make sense to me, and felt quite numb for some time. And so the combination of the physical pain, but also the pain of having your dream taken away, was was a time where a lot of inner movements were happening.
And it's really like when we're young, we don't have much sense of limitation in our bodies, or we don't think, oh, I'm going to age, you know, like someone giving you a bit more context for your life about what you want to do when you're twice the age of what you are. And it's quite crushing. I had a similar kind of thing where, you know, I was dealing with a lot of back pain already, and I went to see a yoga teacher, and she took, you know, one look at me. She looked at me for 2 minutes and said, you know, you realize you have a profound scoliosis and you need to go and see an orthopedic surgeon and do yoga for the rest of your life. And there's that sense of like, oh wow, I never had considered that something could condition my whole life. You know, up until then. And it's that same sense of something feels unfair. Our kind of childish illusions get taken away.
Totally.
by pain, by limitation, and it's, in a way, it's like I look back at that as part of stepping towards adulthood.
Totally.
There's a big maturation process that needs to occur, and if you fight it, you don't get the medicine that's in it. You don't get the lessons that are there.
Yeah.
Right? If you resist it too much.
Sure.
Did you resist it?
Yeah, it was, resistance is a funny word. I mean, yes, I did, because I kept playing.
Right.
I kept playing, and I kept hurting, and because I got surgery first to my spine to fix the herniated disc. They proposed to me that I could get a deeper surgery that they would fuse the vertebrae, but I could wait for that, and that maybe later I will need it. I still haven't had the need for that, so that's great. But I had a procedure done to fix the herniated disc, and then I had a lot of physiotherapy at the university. It was very well supported for self-care, for care with the trainers. And so every day I was doing some rehabilitation to try to strengthen my core and you know, mobilize my hips, and I got better, and I started to feel better, and I was like, forget what the doctor said, like, I can play again.
Right.
And actually I played again, even though San Francisco had cut my scholarship, because I was one of the only 3 out of 30 players who had full scholarship, so it was a lot of money, and I couldn't play. So they removed my scholarship, and I had to speed up my graduation process. I took a lot of classes so I could graduate, and at the same time did a lot of rehab, and I got better. And I ended up telling the coach, I want to play before I go, and I played. And I played a couple games. I scored a goal. I got the comeback player of the year title.
Right.
Yeah. And then I graduated, and I went to France while waiting for replies to my master's degree, if I would go on a master's degree. And I got into my master's, and I went to UT Austin in Texas, and I joined the soccer club, and I started playing, and but after a few months, it didn't work. I started having a lot of pain again, and that wave of pain and just realization of, okay, you can't do that to your back. If you just keep going, your body's not gonna work. And so this is in Texas during my master's degree, when I tried to resist this diagnosis of you have to stop playing. And I kept playing, and the pain was there. It's when a deeper shift happened, and that's when I found yoga as just an approach to take care of myself.
And it's making me think of the way in which we respond to and relate to pain really determines where it takes us in our life. Because I think what's very common these days is like we have pain, and the immediate response, which can be healthy or not, is I don't want to be in pain. So what can I do? But if we mask the pain, if we like ignore it, if we numb ourselves to it, if we block it in some way, we pretend it's not there, we pretend it's not as bad as it is. Like there's so many ways that we go about in our lives minimizing it or just trying to avoid it. Or maybe it's there, and the way we become pain-free is by, you know, avoiding anything that could make us feel pain, but our lives get smaller and smaller. Our physical range of movement gets smaller and smaller until we're like, no, I can't do that. I can't bend over to do that. I can't lift this. I can't do that because I'll be in pain. And the yoga is in really going, what is this pain trying to teach me about how to grow into the future? Like, how do I get into where is this pain coming from? Where is the root? How do I get down there and nourish what is crying out for nourishment? That's like, that there's a part of our body, you know, maybe it's biomechanical, maybe it's emotional, maybe it's the nervous system, whatever it might be. But it's there, crying out for attention, crying out for some kind of nourishment that we can learn how to give it.
But this is where the challenge is, because it needs attention, it needs time, it needs energy, and therefore it needs a shift in where our attention is going to go. And so for me it took time to give my pain the right attention.
Right. Because it's scary. It's hard to face into. Right?
Yeah.
What helped you face into your pain, you think?
Just the repetition of the pain coming back. And then the tools of relaxation helped me. As I discovered that relaxation was a practice, that I could consciously relax both the thoughts and the mind, but also physically. I remember my first shavasana and properly relaxing my body. And that created a more intimate relationship with myself, where I could feel more into myself. And so the pain was no longer this thing down here that I was trying to avoid, and I had to fix, and I had to keep my core tight to protect my spine. And I started, it came gradually, but through the process of conscious relaxation, I became more connected with the pain in a way that I could feel it without reacting to it. And as the years went on with the practice of meditation, of not making a story about everything, it really helped to be with the pain without a story. And that started to shift something. It loosened up the resistance to the pain.
Right. The word that's coming to mind is spaciousness.
Spaciousness.
And I had the same experience of like learning how to open into, or even sort of create more space around a sensation in me, feeling the way the breath moved through me, and how that was a big part of a process of opening up around pain. Spaciousness around my emotions about it, around my fear, my anger, my frustration, all of that sense of like, okay, I'm having to deal with this, or like, wow, this really sucks, or this is painful, I'm really uncomfortable, and just being like, and yet it's not the totality of my experience, and it took a while to learn how not to fall into the mind's tendency to sort of zero in on the pain and have that be like, and it's like, and blow it up into the whole, you know,
That's
of
right.
like, I'm only in pain right now, because that's also, it's paralyzing.
This is what back pain feels like, paralyzing.
Right.
When it's strong, I would feel like I don't know how it feels like to be 80 years old, but essentially it just slows down your day. Just every movement has to be more slow, and it just takes away a kind of youthfulness to life. And then accepting pain has to bring in humility and
Right.
and being okay with not being able to do something. And that was I think that was big for me, to be like, it's a bit of a surrendering to what is.
Our whole culture teaches us that that's not okay, that you don't accept anything less than what you set your goals for, that is that vulnerability is weakness. And especially as men growing up, it's basically the worst thing you can feel, or certainly admit to. And it ends up causing a lot of suffering, once again, especially for men, but for any human who is not able to allow themselves to feel that surrender, that humility, weakness, vulnerability, the low point, the new moon of life, and therefore you don't feel the whole spectrum of what life is.
That's right.
In some way.
That's right.
So it's kind of sad. It's understandable, because we're like, oh no, that's negative. You want to avoid that. You never want to be in the weak position. You never want to have to surrender to what's going on. You get ill. You can beat this.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's all with very good intentions. Especially, we want to win. We want to be healthy. We want to be good. We want to be on top.
Yeah.
And yet there's something about. Okay, so I think there's something here that we're starting to get to in the conversation, which is about a deeper lesson, and deeper lessons that pain brings to our lives, about how we relate to life itself, how we relate to the world and to everything else that's going on, how we relate to ourselves, that it puts us on notice to realize that we're not in control of things, which is scary and even intolerable in the context of the culture that we've grown, the cultures that we've grown up in. We grew up in different countries, but there's sort of, in developed and Western nations, and we've grown up in a time in history that's very technocratic and very focused on control in all sorts of ways, in political ways, in technological ways. We control the environment, we control our bodies. We both had surgeries which were about correcting things that had gone wrong in the body in different ways. And I'm very thankful for that, and I'm sure you are too. Like, we would be in much worse condition if we hadn't been able to receive the benefit of all of that medical understanding, biomedical technology that allowed us to make a shift towards a stronger state in our lives.
Right.
But I also really, as much as I give thanks for that, I see that if I had not transmuted my relationship with my experience, with my body, with my pain, then I could remain deeply unhappy about it, deeply stuck in the pain, or the unfairness of it, or the anger at it, or the frustration, rather than learning how there's kind of an alchemical process about the emotions that come up through pain, that we either learn from, or we keep kind of coming back to the same lesson, eventually.
Yeah.
It keeps coming back, and it'll come back stronger and stronger and stronger until you learn it.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm also deeply grateful that the yoga that I learned, that the yoga teachers I had, helped me. The healers that I had a lot of different therapies on the nervous system, different forms of like osteopathy and chiropractic work, but very kind of gentle and energetic chiropractic work. Different kinds of healers from very subtle to very structural, you know, physiotherapy, and realizing that like to have deep gratitude for so much support that I received. So many people who pointed other possibilities along the way that I might have stayed stuck in all of these little traps of my pain over the years. And it's only in hindsight that I can see that I've got a bit more spaciousness around it as my life has gone on, that I see, oh, wow, how wonderful, how lucky that I met this person when I did, that I had this, that I could receive this therapy. And then even further and further on thinking, wow, how incredible that generations of humans have been applying themselves to this, to really go, what is the essence of this? What is this about? How do we support it? How do you go into it and transmute it rather than avoiding it or just being like, well, my life is over now and I can't do anything about it, and you know, and that there's so much possible. Like I always had the sense when I started teaching yoga, I looked back at myself, you know, this was, you know, over 10, 15 years ago, and I looked back at then and I was like, if you had told me 10 years ago when I was coming out of, you know, rehabilitating my body from surgery and slowly walking and dealing with an enormous amount of pain, that you would be teaching this and helping other people deal with their bodies, I would have laughed.
Right.
I would have never believed that it could be possible. So creating spaciousness about like the possibility for change is one of the great gifts of the yoga practice that I found. That's a little more subtle, a little more abstract, but if it wasn't there, then no matter how much you worked with your body, you'd still be stuck in a certain paradigm of like, I can only do this.
Yeah.
You know? And so that's been an amazing part of yoga practice for me, of like opening up to feel that life can grow into other forms and can deeply change the body itself, but like the experience of living.
I think the way our teacher Simon has guided us into feeling what is happening at the base of the spine, and feeling that from this awareness and this relaxation, we can generate active movements that feel like a massage, that feel good. So learning this relaxation, and from there bringing effort and movement has it's transformed my relationship with movement from exercise, like doing something to strengthen and I need to feel the tension, to actually, no, this is feeling good, you know? And not only it's feeling good during, but it's feeling good after.
So what do you enjoy about your yoga practice?
I really enjoy that it's offering me a space where I'm not looking for a certain amount of sets or reps or getting into a certain shape. It's a space where I'm gonna enter as I am, and I'm just gonna look for the feeling that feels good, and just starting with little movements and like, oh, this is feeling good, and then I'm following the feeling. And so instead of having a set destination, I'm connecting to where I'm at right now and what feels good right now. And so it's a listening to my body, and my body is guiding me into my practice. And this is, I think, quite unique into the rest of my day, where there's maybe a to-do list and there's things to achieve. But when I do my yoga practice, my body is guiding me and I'm just following.
For me, it's been really comforting over the years to have that same sense, to cultivate the trust that my body actually knows what it feels like and what it needs. And if I follow it, then I'm like, okay, yeah, I've created a bit more. Okay, that feels good. Just to hear, my body, my spine goes in a spiral, and it's pretty complex, and so my postures actually, if I practice really freestyle, look really weird, and just to learn how to trust to go into that and be like, you know what, maybe today this is actually what I need to do.
And if you were just following, certain books and pictures, then you you would be missing the juice of the practice.
Yeah.
Which is this internal feeling of massaging the body. For me, it's a massage of the body, and the spinal movements, and not just the spinal movements, but the spinal movements from the core, from a relaxed core, and then the active movements that create the massage while relaxing what needs to be relaxed. This combination of the power and the relaxation together, creating this, it's almost like a hot cold therapy, but instantaneous, where the contraction supports the relaxation, and there's this internal alchemy. And it's when I dive into that, it's a lot of release and a lot of healing happens. Just there's some deep tensions that get to go through listening to the body and going just with what the body feels. And I feel that also the method of understanding the body, okay, we have 9 main joint complexes, and they all move in these simple directions. And just having a map in my mind of what my body can do, then I can do complex movements where all 9 joint complexes are involved, but they're all doing simple things in unity. And so, and it's like an orchestra of many different musicians and artists playing together a symphony. And to me, this is the juicy part of the practice, when there's this wholeness in the movement, and it's like a dance.
For me, when you talk about that, I really think of the way in which connecting movement to the core, and something that is so important, so fundamental to the synergy method, and really to good hatha yoga, about moving actively from this point that connects everything else. That the ancient yogis talked about, all of the nadis meet down here, but that when you experience it in your movement in your body, you go, hang on, if I come from here, then everything is possible. The mind doesn't have to think. The gut brain kind of goes, okay, great, we're going in this direction or not. And what that started to give me as I moved more freely from the center of my being was a sense of that the discomfort that I might feel, the pain that was there, could be processed from the center outwards. And it gives you, when you talk about a map, I had the sense over time of feeling the way that things could be expressed, and that pain came up in response to a lack of connection, a blockage of some sort between the center and a part of the body, and that by feeling, not just focusing on the part itself, which, like we were talking about before, was like not just going into the pain and being like, what is the pain about, or having that be the whole thing, of just feeling like, this is part of a pathway in my body, a physical pathway, an energetic pathway, you know, and whether you, whatever level you look at it, on the fascia, on the you know, the subtle body, realizing if I can strengthen these pathways through my body from the core, then whatever is there automatically starts to get strengthened, or like maybe strength grows around where the pain is feeling, or maybe some space opens up, energy can flow through, blood can flow through a part of the body, and the pain would change. It would either change texture or it would just go. And often what I would find is like, oh, I used to have a pain in my hip, and now my ankle is not feeling so good, but I feel like there's somehow more connection coming through, and then something would restructure itself.
Yeah.
And so it gives a sense of understanding intuitively, and kind of, should we say, biodynamically, about how this restructuring of the body is going about. And we stop imposing our yoga on us from the outside.
That's right.
And start letting express more fully from the inside.
That's right.
And that's a massive shift.
That's a massive shift.
Yeah.
It's no longer like a car breaking down and you've got to change the part. You've got to fix something. This is a big shift in the mindset. Like, we don't need to fix something. It will fix itself. Once there is blood flow there, once there's energy flow there, and once we let go of the tension that we might be holding on to. I think that was, with my lower back issues and pain, a little bit of a misunderstanding that I was passed on at the beginning, that I need to hold my core at all times to protect my spine. And that gave me the feeling of, ooh, something's broken, I need to fix it, I need to protect it. And understanding that, no, I can relax, because relaxation will promote blood flow. And that if a part of the body is to heal, it needs good blood flow. And that the blood flow is, like you were saying, is part of a pathway. How do we invite blood flow through different pathways? And first we have to understand what blocks the flow, and the tension and the tightness, or even the extra effort, this blocks the flow. So learning to actually relax my core first, relax my pelvic floor, my genital, my anus. I mean, this was a revelation, like relaxing my anus. Oh, I've had a tight ass my whole
right,
life.
you've been like, on guard.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
And it's like, oh, I can relax that. And I'm actually not, defecating on myself. I was just holding too much tension. But the pain, and I was told you need to protect and tighten your core. And being able to release this, I felt space in my lower back. I felt space in my lower abdomen. And then from that relaxation, learning to move gently and essentially massage myself.
You feel how mobile our sacrum actually is.
Yeah.
That these connections can be held, strong in relationship to each other, but still have this flow through them. And if it's all locked up in one thing, we feel like robots, we feel restricted, we can't sit properly, we can't move properly. It just, everything feels harder.
Yeah. And, I've come to the synergy method about 8 years into my yoga journey. And I feel like the first 8 years, such an important piece was missing in the teachings. That and then when I understood that key of start by relaxing, but deeply, not just in the shavasana, but while you're moving, and that you can carry that relaxation while you're moving. This really transformed for me the whole journey and the whole feeling of the practice. I started to really enjoy my practice. It was not like, oh, I need to go on my mat to do the stretching.
Yeah.
It was just not fun. And now it's fun. Now it's like the best thing ever. It's a dance. And the word dance also took a whole new meaning for me. It's not just like dancing, but it's, my body wants to dance. And the healing happens in the dancing, which is this fluidity and this power at the same time, which is a beautiful thing that also when we get to share this. And here at Amara, we share yoga practice, but we also share the practice of ecstatic dance, and we love to fuse the two together because we know that a synergy practice will lead to a good dance, and seeing that energy in the collective, in the shala, is something that's really beautiful.
Yeah. I think when you were talking about the tightness that you had in your body, it makes me think of that's what we do when we are in a defensive position, because it makes the body stronger. If you're going to take a punch, you tighten.
Yeah.
If you're scared, or if you're like you're not sure about things, you tighten your pelvic floor, you tighten your anus, it gives you maybe that sense of like I could be ready to run or fight if I needed to. And for me, over time, I had that sense of starting to appreciate more and more in my own life, but in seeing in others, and in coming to teaching and eventually helping others in their own yoga, realizing that we all grow up to some extent in defense to life around us, to the society around us, to the people around us, to not feeling safe at school, at work, on the street, in cities, all of this kind of thing. So our bodies naturally want to take this shape, and learning to unwind that is in itself a bit scary. In the same way as pain in the body and kind of opening into it rather than closing against it and like feeling like, no, I've got to hold the core strong to protect my back. Because when I let go, I can feel it more. It's like, whoa, actually you've got to feel it. You're going to have to go through it. Otherwise, it's always going to be there conditioning everything that you do around it. And even if you hold strong around it, eventually it's exhausting. It's not an energy efficient way of living or moving. And so learning how to let go of the defenses, so much of yoga as a tantric practice is about this. The Shavasana is dying to that, letting go of the defenses and realizing like at some point there's no defense. And so as we let go of that and then realize, oh wow, that's how I create the spaciousness. That's how I have breath and energy and blood flowing through different parts of my body. That's how I not avoid the pain or create a shell around it, but I go into it and through it and out the other side. And there's a whole space, there's a whole life beyond that otherwise doesn't seem possible. And it's kind of like I was saying right at the beginning, that sense of realizing new possibilities, that there's new vistas that aren't visible from the pain itself. And it's only through creating space around it, going through it, alchemizing that pain into something else, and then eventually finding what life wants to do with that pain, what the information from that pain as a teacher in your life, in my life, in your life, actually is there for. Recognizing that it's important. It has so much to tell us.
Right.
And so having that practice be, like you said before, the listening to what is really there. Cultivating that capacity to hear and to listen and going, okay, this is what's next. This is how I grow into myself beyond the apparent limitation that is there.
Yeah. And I feel that it leads to going through that, and when at first it feels impossible, but then like you're saying, you go through that and you see the other side, that there are insights and there's something new to experience, also leads to a sense of compassion, of understanding that we all experience pain in different ways, and then we all experience some form of resistance to it, and I think that both for you and for me, this this initiative or this spark of wanting to share this practice is essentially to say, hey, it's things can be okay, and pain doesn't have to be the end of everything. It might be the end of something, the end of what we thought was important, but this transmutes into understanding, there is something else, and we can put our love and our energy into something else. And I think that's the detachment that comes by understanding, maybe what I thought I had to do was is actually not what is important now. And so pain has been for me a teacher of just paying attention to what's important now, and to having to just let go of maybe some preconditioned idea I had of what I needed to become.
It's like a teaching that I've heard a few times in different ways from different people is that in a human life, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And it's looking at, hey, pain is going to arise in your back, in your knee, and your, like the joints, obviously, something we really need to take care of. We'll be heartbroken at some point. The pain of seeing suffering in the world, there's so much there that we're going to feel if we're not blocking ourselves completely to our feeling, which then carries its own pain. But our relationship with the pain is something that we can choose. It's something we can learn how to change, to shift, to transmute, like you said, into something different, and learn how to see that pain as a part of life, in the same way as death is a part of life. That it's part of what makes it precious. It's part of what makes us appreciate feeling good, feeling healthy, that feeling that we can follow our feeling into new realms, into what's good for us, and that it can always teach us, and that when it comes up, it's not a bad thing, that we go, okay, what is this about? What am I learning from this? What does it have to teach?
Yeah.
And already just having that more open perspective and that possibility of accepting, embracing, feeling, and feeling through and traversing pain changes our relationship with it, and avoids a lot of the suffering that we have connected to and attendant to pain in our lives, which is often about the resistance that we've been talking about, the defending against it, the trying to avoid it. And so it's just a great lesson that really alleviates a lot of the suffering in our life if we can open into realizing that we can have a relationship with pain in our body, in our feeling, in our mind, and that it's okay because it can change. And there's support all around us. There's support from so many generations of ancestors and from so much wisdom and teaching that is here in the world that can help us to take these steps into moving beyond it.
Aho.
Oh,
Thanks.
thanks.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, totally.